Hi there everyone, I am Chris, this is Simply Classic, and today we are going to make the Harumi Bag by Amercian Stitchers. And I've never made the bag before, and this is what we're doing, Harumi Bag. Now, this is kind of cool because it is different, and that's the very first thing that this says on here is that a different kind of concealed carry bag, and it is. What it has, I'm going to see if you can see this picture. Instead of having like a hidden zipper, which you know how much I love hidden zippers, but this doesn't have a hidden zipper. Instead, this has an entirely a section inside the bag. You have like an extra pocket here, and that it's not really a divider. It's more like a pocket where you can put the whatever it is you want to conceal behind. So I've really been wanting to do this bag because I want to do it as a bag to carry my iPad. It has foam, right? So it protects it. I'm not really sure how big the bag says it's 10 3/4 inches wide, so it probably wouldn't fit a laptop, but I feel like it would fit a iPad, Kindle, something like that. And it's a perfect place because it's got foam and you just stick it in there. It's gonna have its own little pocket, and it has a little pocket as well that she's calling a magazine pocket that you could put a magazine in, but I think it'd be a perfect spot for a charger. So whenever I travel, I always take my iPad with me, and I tend to take it with me like on the plane, and this would be a perfect bag for that. So this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna make it into like a little gadget bag, I guess we could call it. Not laptop, but iPad bag, Kindle bag, whatever you want. And I will tell you though when to sew on the Velcro if you do want to do that. But we're going to skip that part today, but I'll tell you when. So anyway, there's a lot of pieces to this bag. We're going to go over those pieces first, as we always do, and then we'll get stitching. So let's get going. Interestingly, there are no zippers in this bag. There's no interior zipper pocket. There's no zipper pocket on the top. You close it with magnetic snaps. So no zippers, interestingly. I just thought that was kind of cool. Anyway, all right, so let's go over these pattern pieces. The first thing we have here is the exterior front sides. And when you cut these, you need to cut them mirrored because there is an angle on the middle section. So make sure you cut them mirrored. So we have two front sides. And our foam is going to be sewn on after we put the front of the bag together, so you're not adhering anything to this quite yet. We also have a middle front section. And again, nothing on the back. We have the exterior back, and the exterior back is one large piece. We will adhere some foam on the back of this here in just a little bit. The bottom, now the bottom, you're going to cut one exterior, and then you're also going to cut either Peltex or Decaville Heavy and a piece of foam. We're going to put the feet on before we put the foam on. So I have adhered my Decaville Heavy to the bottom of this piece. We'll put our feet on and then we'll go from there. We have a front exterior slip pocket. We're going to cut one lining and one main. Our main for this is our metallic snake in the purple and tan. And then you saw we're using the camel as a contrast for that. And then on the interior, we're using our linen in the color Lilas. So I have one exterior and one lining piece for this front exterior slip pocket. And on all my lining pieces, I'm putting Woven Fuse 2. All right, we have a back top facing. We have one of these. We have a front top facing. We have one of these. We have our snap tabs to hold the bag together. And what we did is cut them slightly larger. I have 4 of them. I'm going to either glue or put some double-sided tape after I put my snap tab on there. And then we'll kind of do a extra little cutout so we can edge coat and make it all nice and pretty. So we have 4 of those pieces. We have our front lining piece, and the front lining piece has got squares cut out the bottom. So we have one of those. We have a back lining piece. Our back lining piece has squares, but you see they're much smaller. So we have one of those. We have our concealed carry pocket piece. We have one large piece. We have what she's calling our magazine pocket, which I'm going to use as my charger cord pocket. It's going to be perfect for that. We have our interior slip pocket. And this is a gusseted slip pocket. It's kind of a little bit different, so it's going to be interesting to do that. It'll be fun to do something a little different. Then we have our exterior foam. So we have two of these, and this is essentially what's going to be put on the bag once we get everything sewn together for the front. I'm going to use some Deco Bond to get it on, and I'll show you how I do that because my foam is not fusible. We have our concealed carry foam pocket piece, or yeah, it's the foam, but it's going to go on the pocket. We have our concealed carry, another piece of foam. It basically has a front and a back. We have some Decaville Light for the concealed carry pocket snap stabilizer. We actually have two of those. We have our strap connectors. We have two of them. We have some foam for the bottom of the bag. Told you we have Decaville Heavy and or Peltex, and then a piece of foam. Here's the foam. We have two pieces of Decaville Light for our strap connector stabilizer. Excuse me. Yes, there's two of these. Sorry. Here's the second one. Got two of those. We have one magazine pocket stabilizer, Decaville Light. I have just one of those. And then we have our strap. And our strap, we are going to do a double-sided strap. So we cut one in each color. And the strap's different. It's kind of neat how she puts it together. So I'm excited to try that out, see how it goes. All right, those are all of our pieces. So as far as hardware, you're going to, of course, need some snaps, some magnetic snaps. You're going to need two O-rings, 1 inch. Well, she calls for a little bit longer, bigger O-rings, but I'm using 1 inch because that's all I have. A 1 inch D-ring, a 1 inch swivel clasp. And you notice there's only one of these. And then we have some purse feet and some rivets, some magnetic snaps, all ready to go. All right, let's get going. I'm going to start with the strap, although in the pattern it's the last thing you do. I went ahead and drew a line down the center of each of these strap pieces and put some 1/2 inch double-sided tape. One strap, and in my case it's this camel, is slightly larger than the other, and that's good. We want that. That's how the pattern's written. We're going to put the short ends of one side together, and we're going to stitch. We're going to peel this tape back just a little bit. I'm going to open up the seam allowance, and we are going to top stitch from the right side on both sides of this seam. Once that's done, we're going to take one of our O-rings and our swivel clasp. Make sure that our strap is not twisted. And we're going to slide these on. At this point, doesn't matter how or where, or just get them on. And then we're going to connect the other short ends of this strap. Go ahead and open up this seam allowance, and we're going to do the same thing. Top stitch from the right side down each side of the seam. From here, we're going to separate our O-ring and our swivel clasp to opposite sides. And we're going to peel the backing off this tape and fold our edges in to meet that line. So a lot of times when we fold these edges in, we fold it just short of the line. In this case, I want it to meet the line. Where my seam is, I am going to throw a clip on here. And our edges will meet in the middle. So I'm going to continue folding this until it's all folded. And then we'll move on. Once all of the edges are folded, you want to go ahead and make sure that your O-ring and your swivel clasp are roughly at the point of intersection of the straps. Now, Gail suggests putting some stabilizer in this strap. I do not do that because I'm using faux, but if you were using cotton or something, you really do want to go ahead and put some stabilizer in here, and you're going to put it on the larger piece. So I'm going to fold this in half, and the larger piece, which again in my case is the camel, is going to slightly be folded to the back. So what that means is your seam is not going to be right at the intersection point of where your hardware is. It's going to be just to the back side. Okay. Now you can put some double-sided tape between these two layers to hold them. You won't be stitching on top of it. You're going to be stitching either, you're going to top stitch, so either to the right or left. So it does help to do that. I'm going to just first put some clips here. I'm just matching up the edges. I want to see how it lines up. I may have to adjust it some when I get to the other side. because I want the seams to be about the same distance from the hardware on both sides. So it looks like I'm going to have to shift over to the other side just a tad. So I'm just going to unclip these and move all this over until I can get the seam about the same distance on each side of the hardware. I need to move this one just a tad. This is a little less on this side than it is on this side. So I'm going to get all this lined up and then we'll stitch it. Everything appears to be lined up really well. I'm going to stitch across this short edge just below where the seam is. And then I'm going to come down, stitch across the other short edge, and then come down the other side. So when I stitch the long edges, it's going to be about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. Now right here you see I've got a lot of bulk. I'm going to put some protection there so I don't mess up my project. I don't want my presser foot to drag. Okay, and then I'm going to use my edge guide. I'm just trying to make sure that these edges are straight and even. And then I'm going to move this and turn. And then come down the other side. Again, protecting my project here. And then I'm just going to back stitch across this edge here. So this is what we have so far. We have a strap completed with a O-ring on one side and a swivel clasp on the other side. So we're going to set this aside for just a minute, and we're going to get our strap connector pieces. We're going to get our strap connector stabilizer pieces, and we're going to put these right in the center of each one of these and press them on. So in order to find the center, I am going to make a mark. I'm going to do the same thing on the stabilizer piece. And I'm just going to line up those marks. And I'm going to go to the iron and I'm going to press this on. I'm going to do the same thing for this piece and then we'll continue. Once I put the stabilizer on, I went ahead and drew a line right down the center. You're going to take some double-sided tape, put it right down the center on that line, and then we're going to peel the backing off of this tape and fold the long edges in. Now, since you have some stabilizer here, it's going to be easy to know where to fold because your stabilizer is going to kind of be the edge of that. So I'm going to do that part first. And then your pieces should just about meet in the middle. And then I'll fold the rest. Okay, and here we have our strap connector piece. So from here we're going to use a little bit more double-sided tape. And from each short edge, we're going to measure and mark. And of course, this is a measurement that Gail gives us in the pattern. I'm going to put some double-sided tape from that mark down to the short edge. I'm going to peel the backing off the tape. And we're going to fold along our mark so that these pieces meet in the center. I actually folded a little short of my mark, but basically you just want these pieces to meet here in the center. So now we're going to stitch around all four edges. What's going to happen is this is going to be put on the bag, riveted on the bag like this. So you really do see how mine are not quite in the center, and this one is wanting to pucker a little bit. I'm going to move that down. Move this one up just a tad and leave just a small space there between the two, so that when I do go to fold it, it will have a place to fold and I won't have any puckers there. Okay, so from here, I'm going to, from the right side, stitch around all four edges. I did not back stitch. I will pull those threads through the back and tie them off. So from here, I'm going to tie these threads off. And then I'm going to repeat the exact same process for the other strap connector. So both strap connectors are now sewn. We're going to mark our holes for our rivets because this is going to get attached to the bag with rivets. So we want to make 2 marks on the edge, the short edge of each side. And got this template here. I'm going to use this to make sure my holes or my marks are evenly spaced. Let's see. You want them on the inside of the stitching. And what I'm going to do here is make this easier on myself. I'm going to punch these holes. And then I'm just going to line it up so that I can punch the other side. So punch, punch. I'm just going to fold this in half and mark through so that I know where to punch the other side. And that way I know they'll be lined up. You just want to make sure that you don't punch your stitching. You want to punch just on the inside. Otherwise your stitches will come apart. All right, so we're going to set these aside for right now. We do not need them. I just wanted to kind of get that out of the way. So we have the strap, we have the strap connectors. So let's move on to the main part of the bag. All right, we're going to start with our front exterior slip pocket, which is piece E. We cut 1 lining and we cut 1 main. We're going to line up the top edge, and the top is the edge that is shorter. Okay, see the bottom edge is longer, the top edge is shorter. We're going to just put some clips up here and we are going to stitch. We're going to turn this to the right side. And I'm going to make sure that the lining is not peeking through at the top. So I have just a hair of my main fabric showing through on the back. Throw a few clips in here as well just to hold it. And now we are going to top stitch. So we're going to take our B piece, we're going to put these together, and we are going to stitch this pocket on. Now, if you want your tag here, you want to go ahead and maybe put that on now. I think this here is a good place for it. Up here is okay as well. It's just kind of preference as to what you prefer. I'm going to go ahead and put mine at the bottom. So I'm going to stick that on and we will be back. So I have the tag on. I'm going to go ahead and clip this pocket onto the midsection of this bag, and then we're going to stitch the pocket on. And I'm just going to base this with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So now that that's on, we're going to take our A pieces, and our A pieces we cut mirrored. You can see they're angled. So we want to go ahead and put these on either side. So the end that has the wider part is the top. I'm just going to put this right sides together. Then we're going to stitch it on. All right, now open these and we're going to top stitch. And when we top stitch, we're going to top stitch on the side piece, and the seam allowance is going to go towards the side piece. From here, we're going to place our foam on, and we want to make sure that we mark from the top where that foam is going to go. So I'm just going to mark with a pen, and we're using a 1/2 inch seam allowance in this pattern, so we're marking right at a 1/2 inch here. So I'm going to mark that on my newly constructed front panel. I'm also going to mark it on my back panel. And the back panel is just a solid piece, so it really doesn't matter what the top is, just unless you have a pattern where you have to have it going in the correct direction. Either side is fine. And then we're also going to mark that same mark on our front and top facing pieces. So one of these is bigger than the other, longer. You can see here. I just wanted to point out that is correct. Just going to turn these around. We are going to mark. Same thing, 1/2 inch. Again, this is just for foam placement. Okay. So from here, grab your foam pieces. This is piece L. And we want to place the foam just under this line. Just under this line, and also a 1/2 inch from each side. So if you want to measure the sides as well, you could certainly do that. Now, I do not have fusible foam. This is just the anti-soft and stable. And I've mentioned this product before in other videos. This is called Heat and Bond. And it's a way to attach your foam with heat without having to sew it in, and especially if you're trying to keep it outside the seam allowances. So you can get this at local Joann's or wherever, Hobby Lobby, wherever they may carry it. And it comes on a roll like this. And all you're going to do is cut a piece that is the same size as your foam. Now, one side is kind of bubbly. You can feel it's kind of rough. The other side has paper on. So when you fuse your foam, you're going to fuse it on the side that's kind of bubbly. And then you're going to peel the backing off of it, place it on your pattern piece, and put some more heat, and it'll all adhere wonderfully. So it's just an alternative to using fusible foam. If you either don't have it or you don't have access to it, this Heat and Bond is really great. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to cut the Heat and Bond, get it all adhered to my main pieces, and then we will continue. Gail does not have feet on this bag, but I wanted feet because of the fact that I'm going to be using it kind of as like a more of a gadget bag than anything else. So I went ahead and put 6 feet on the bottom of the bag. I have my Decaville Heavy already fused on. I measured an inch from each edge, both in the short sides and the long sides. And I also marked the line down the center. And I just, at the intersecting points, went ahead and put feet. So from here, I'm going to take my foam piece and sew it on. Now, you can fuse it on, but I'm going to stitch it, and I'm going to stitch it just right along the edge of the Decaville and foam to get it on. And I think it's just going to give a nice detail on the exterior of the bag. To hold it in place, I'm going to put some inch double-sided tape, and this is going to do 2 things. It's going to obviously hold the foam in place for me while I sew it, but it's also going to help hold these feet in place. I have found that a lot of times this double-sided tape really helps with hardware, keeps it from coming apart or out or whatever the situation may be, because it's so sticky. All right, so I'm just going to peel the backing off of this tape. And place the foam right on top. Now the foam and the Decaville are the same pattern piece, so they should be exactly the same size. Looks like mine is a little bit longer than it needs to be on this edge. So I'm just going to cut it off so that it's equal with the Decaville. All right. So now from the right side, I'm going to go ahead and stitch. Now, I can kind of feel where the edge is, but if you're not sure, or if you want to mark it, you certainly can, and that way you know exactly where to sew. I'm not going to backstitch, I'm going to pull my threads through. So from here, I'm going to pull my threads through, tie them off, and then we will move on. So now with my foam fused on the front and on the back, I'm going to put my front and back right sides together. I'm going to clip, and we're going to stitch down each side. So from here, we're going to put our bottom on. So I want to find the centers of these longer edges. And we're going to place the bottom, matching up the center. Of course, I have my feet on, everything's good to go on here, to the center here. So the bottom is going to be shorter. You can see here, it doesn't go all the way to the edge. You didn't do anything wrong. That is correct. What we're going to do is stitch right from the edge of our stabilizer. Okay, so basically from right here, we're going to stitch all the way down this side. Now, you can actually mark this. You would mark a 1/2 inch up and a 1/2 inch over as far as where to stitch. But basically, it should be right there at the edge of your stabilizer. Okay, so the easiest way to do it is to just stitch all the way around the stabilizer. But first, we're going to stitch this edge. So again, don't start at the edge. We're going to start in right at the stabilizer. Okay, so here is, you can see here, here's the edge right here of my bottom. I'm starting a 1/2 inch in. And I'm going to stop a 1/2 inch from the edge over here. We're going to match up the other long edge, match up the centers. And then clip down. And once again, we're going to stitch from the edge of the stabilizer to the edge of the stabilizer. Don't go beyond that. so now that we have that, we need to make sure that we can get these edges folded in properly. So what we're going to do is to cut our bag. So you're going to cut not the bottom, but the actual bag right where the stitches stop. So I can see that that is where my stitch ends right there. I'm just going to stick my scissors in and clip up to that spot. I'm going to do that on all 4 edges. You can see it really good on this white. Okay, so that's where the stitches stop. I'm just going to clip right there. Okay, just like that. And one more. Okay, and now you're going to be able to fold the sides over. My stabilizer is not sticking. I have to hit that with the iron again. And open this up, open up your side seam. And then we'll be able to stitch right across here. So as you open this up, you will stitch from, let's see if I can get this flat for you so you can see. You're going to stitch right where you left off here at this corner. And you're going to stitch all the way across to the other corner. We're going to do that on both sides. I'm going to go hit my stabilizer one more time with an iron so that I can make sure that stays down. So as you stitch, you want to go ahead and flatten out your bag as much as you can. You're going to stitch with the bottom down on your machine. We're going to repeat for the other side. So from here, let's go ahead and cut these seam allowances back some, on the bottom especially. Make sure I get these corners out. We have a lot of bulk here because this is where our pocket is, so I definitely want to make sure I cut that back. And just cut these little edges off. Let's get all of this out of the way. Okay, so from here, we're going to turn our bag. Okay, we're going to make sure the corners are poked out and that everything looks good. And there we go. All right, so we're going to set this aside for just a minute and we're going to work on our snap tabs. So the snap tabs, we have these 4 pieces. And I cut them a little bit larger than what was called for, just so that I could make sure I could sew and stitch around and then cut it back once I stitch. So I'm going to, and there is a spot on the pattern piece, so you can lay the pattern piece down and go ahead and mark. And you really just need to mark 2 of these we're going to put our clasp on here. Now, I can tell you that when I go to sew this on, it's going to be really hard to get around this snap tab because it's so close to the edge, you know, this washer. And even if I use my zipper foot, I can see I'm going to have a difficult time. So I'm just going to move this up slightly. I'm going to do that on both sides. Now, instead of a magnetic snap, you could just use a regular snap here, and that would be fine. And you could install that after you put it all together, which would be actually a little bit easier. So you choose how you would like to do this. Let me see if I can get these on. Now, I'm going to put some stabilizer on the back of these snap tabs because this seems a little bit flimsy to me. So I always keep some Decovil heavy and light handy. Just for this reason, for rivets and snap tabs, or any kind of hardware really. I'm just going to clip around here. All right, I'm going to do the same thing for this one. And then I always like to tap these with a hammer, the back end here, to make sure that it is nice and secure. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we'll tape these together and we'll get them all sewn. So now that I have the snap tabs on, I'm just going to use a little bit of 1/2 inch double-sided tape on the back. Peel the backing off the tape, and then I'm going to match up best I can the edges. And again, I'm going to trim this after I sew it, so I'm not too worried about getting it perfect, but I certainly want to get it close. All right, so from here I'm going to stitch around. I'm going to use a little bit larger than 1/8 of an inch seam allowance so I can trim off some. I'm going to do some hand cranks around this curve. And put a little bit of protection along the hardware, and then stitch up. So from here I'm going to take a nice sharp pair of scissors and I'm just going to even up these edges. I'm going to put some edge paint, some base coat, and then some edge paint, and go ahead and get these so that they're finished up and drying while we continue on. I'm gonna go do the same thing with this and we'll move on. While we're waiting for our snap tabs to dry, the edge coat and the base coat, I went ahead and took my back lining piece, measured a 1/2 inch down, and centered one of the magnetic snap tab stabilizers 1/2 inch down and centered on this piece. I then turned it around and I marked the place for my snaps. Okay, I'm going to turn it around one more time, and I'm going to take piece M, which is the foam piece for the concealed carry pocket, and I am going to place it 1.5 inches down and centered. So, right up there. Now you can go ahead and use some heat and bond, or you can sew this, or you can glue this, however you want to do it. I'm going to sew it on. I think it's going to be fine. It's inside the bag now, and a nice square in the bag is not going to be a problem. So I know my bobbin thread is good, so I'm just going to stitch from the wrong side so I can see exactly where the edges are, and I'm stitching 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Okay, so now that that's sewn on, if you want to go ahead and sew some hook and loop tape or Velcro to this bag, you can go ahead and do it now. And Gil gives you the placement for that. It's basically over here on the side. All right, I'm going to set this aside for just a minute. And we're going to take our magazine pocket, is the name of the piece. I'm going to use it as my charger pocket. But on the bottom of the piece, you have these 4 dark lines. We're going to mark, just with a tiny little marking pen, those 4 lines. Okay, just at the bottom. We're going to take our little stabilizer piece and we are going to center it on the back, and we're going to fuse it on. So if you would like to make sure it is good and centered, which I do, I'm going to just find the centers of my pocket at the top and the bottom. Same thing on the piece of Decoville Light. And then on the wrong side, I'm going to center that. Now, you don't have a huge seam allowance at the top and the bottom. It's only about 1/4 of an inch. So go ahead and fuse this on, and then we'll sew the pocket. While I was at the machine, I also folded over this top edge the 1/4 of an inch. You can feel it folding right around this Decoville Light, and we're going to top stitch. It's a really thin seam allowance there. So at the bottom, we're going to take the inside line. So that is the line, these 2 lines here. Here's our outside lines, here and here, and our inside lines are here and here. We're going to take the inside line and we're going to fold it to the outside line. Just like that, and match up those dots. Okay, so inside line to the outside line and fold it. Now, you're going to see that when you do that, it's at the edge of your decaville, these little pleats. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of fold this all the way up. And I'm just going to baste these pleats at the very bottom. So this is what we have. It's now basted in place. We're now going to fold the bottom up, and you can either use an iron or you can use a little bit of double-sided tape. I'm just going to put a couple clips here. We're also going to fold the sides in 1/4 inch. So we got some really teeny tiny seam allowances here. I'm just going to put some clips on here to hold it. All right, so from here, she has you stitching this pocket on next to your Velcro. Your Velcro would be here. Since I'm not using any Velcro, I'm just going to stitch this on right in the center. Now, these seam allowances are really tiny, and there's no lining, like there's no backing on this. So I'm gonna kind of back up here, and now that you see how Gail has you sew this on, I'm going to change it a little bit. I'm going to go cut another piece of this, and I'm going to fold it in half and then do all the same stuff. I just think it's going to be a little bit neater, and I really would like to have some kind of lining on the back of this pocket. So let me just cut a few other pieces, and then let's take a look and see how we'll do that. This is what we call improvising. So this is the pattern piece for the magazine pocket. I actually added 1/4 inch on each side and about a 1/2 inch at the top, and I cut out a new piece. Yeah, it's a 1/2 inch at the top. I also have some of my adhesive lining here, and so I cut the same width, but I kept it the same height as the pattern piece. So it's the same width as the pocket piece, but the same height as the pattern piece. I'm going to stitch these right sides together along this top edge. Oh, the other thing I did is I did cut a piece of Decaville Light, and I centered it on the back. And I'm going to stitch this using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. From here, I am going to pull the lining down and I'm going to stitch the bottom using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. From here, I'm going to turn this around. I'm going to go press this, and then I'm going to peel the backing off of the paper and make sure that the lining gets pressed down on the front of the linen, or on the back of the linen rather. So now it's pressed, and I'm just going to peel the backing off of this paper, or off of this lining. Okay. Clean up this edge right here so it's nice and straight. And I can feel where the Decoville light is. So I'm going to mark, center this pattern piece and mark the lines and go ahead and do the folds, because I did like the fold aspect of it. Okay, and then fold along the Decoville and bring it to the edge, or to the other line there. Okay. So now let's baste these. I'm going to clip at the top too, just to hold it in place for me. I think it's going to make this a little bit easier. And actually, I'm not going to baste because I'm going to sew this on instead. So from here, I am going to just fold these edges in. And the edges, you don't want to fold even with this edge because you're going to need to stitch next to it. So I'm just going to fold so that I've got some showing here. I'm going to use some double-sided tape like Gail recommends, and I'm going to use, let me see, some 1/8 of an inch right along that edge. So along each edge, side edge that is, I'm just going to lay some double-sided tape. Okay, peel the backing off the tape, fold that in, just on itself. You put a clip. All right, do the same thing over here, and then we'll sew this on. So if you have bought any of this adhesive lining from me, keep all your scraps. I'm noticing I use it a lot for different things here and there. It's just really, it's really kind of nice and convenient. Okay, so from here we are going to center this on now. And stitch. So I'm going to stitch down one side, across the bottom, keeping the pleats in, and then up the other side. And I think I'm going to use one of these Sew Tight magnets for this because I want to make sure it stays in place. All right, here we go. I'm just moving the pleat out of the way as I sew down. And then when I get to the bottom, I'm going to turn and fold that pleat back under and stitch across. And then I will turn again and come up this side. And there is our little pocket for our charger or USB cord, whatever it may be. Very cool. Okay, so I do like the fact that I was able to use some of that lining. That nylon lining really helps it. It's kind of slippery, so things can slip in and out of it pretty easy. So if you have any extra, I'd say go ahead and use it and build your pocket that way. That way it's got a lining on the back. All right, moving along. Go ahead and install your snaps in the back, and then we're going to set this piece aside. Go ahead and get your concealed carry pocket piece. This is this piece here. This is the long piece. We're going to fuse the other piece of stabilizer right in the center. So I'm going to just find the center this way, put a little crease. And I want to fuse it right up against the fold. Just like that. I'm going to go to the iron and fuse that down. Should be the same distance from each side. And you can double check. Yeah, it's just about 3/4 of an inch from each side. Go ahead and use your pattern piece and make sure that where it says place on fold is actually on the fold, and mark where your snap placement goes. Now I put the Decaville light, on this side, so that's where you want to mark where your snap placement is, because that's just giving that stability. So we're going to take our foam piece, and this is piece N, and we're going to open this back up, and we're going to place it right below this stabilizer. Okay, so here's the stabilizer, here's the foam. We're just going to line them up. I'm going to stitch this on like I did the other side, and I'm going to stitch it from the wrong side. From here, we want to go ahead and install the other side of the snaps on the bag. So I'm going to mark that. Okay, once that's done, we're going to fold this pocket so it's wrong sides together. I'm going to put a couple clips. and we're going to baste this together. I'm also going top stitch here at the top. Grab your pattern piece, or you can measure, and we're going to cut out little 1/2 inch squares here at the bottom. And you may have already done this when you cut your piece out, and if you did, that's fine. Okay, so this is what we have. I'm going to grab my main piece here, and I'm going to just make sure that these snaps snap together, which they're great. Okay, and that's what it looks like. So this pocket is obviously a snapping pocket. And when you put your iPad in, or whatever it may be, you're going to have nice foam on both sides. And I mean, it's just super cool. All right, so we're going to set this aside for just a minute, and let's work on the slip pocket. And this slip pocket is for the other side, and it is a gusseted slip pocket. Like the other pocket, this does not have any lining on it. And the reason why is because she says to use a waterproof canvas for this, which I did not do. So that's my error, I guess you could say. That's my thing. So I am actually going to, she has the same thing where you've got gusseted. So I'm going to get some of my backing, my adhesive backing, and I'm using that only because it's super, super thin, and it really works well for these pockets. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to cut it the same width and a 1/2 inch shorter, and stitch the top and bottom just like we did on the other pocket. So let me get that together, and then we'll go ahead and sew it. Here's my lining. I'm going to go ahead and put some clips and stitch. I'm using a 1/4 inch seam allowance for this. And I'm just going to take this lining and line it up with the other long side. And stitch. Go ahead and turn it. I'm going to go to the iron and press, and you definitely want to make sure you press from the right side. Let me put a few clips here. going to go ahead and top stitch this first, and then I'll press. Help me hold this down. All right, I'm going to take this over to the iron and press this linen. Now that that's pressed, I'm going to remove the paper backing. It's a little awkward seeing as how it's kind of in the middle here, but it's definitely doable. All right, so let's go ahead and just press it down with our hands. I'm just going to trim this up so this pocket is nice and square. And then take your pocket piece, and again, there's marks on here. We want to go ahead and mark the marks. So I'm going to use Cell Line Erase pen and just make little marks here. And the arrows on the pattern piece tell you how to fold it. So these two arrows are pointing to the inside, this arrow is pointing to the outside, this arrow is pointing to the outside. So from here, let me just mark the center as well. That will help on this center one. And I'm going to just fold it right to the center. Put a clip. And it does help to put a clip at the top and the bottom, even though you're not sewing at the top. I'm going to do the same thing with this one. And if you've ever done any kind of garment sewing, you'd be very familiar with these pleats. It's basically the same thing. Okay, and then on the sides, I'm going to do the same thing. Now I'm going to move my marks over just a tad because I'm going to be sewing. And I want to leave myself enough space here to turn this under and sew. Okay, so then what's going to happen is we're going to have these nice pleated pockets that we're going to be able to fit sunglasses in, of course, cell phone, anything else we may have. So let's do the same thing and use some 1/8 of an inch double-sided tape to hold these edges, these side edges. And then we can sew this on. We're going to sew it on the same way, only we have a center seam this time as well. Oh, runaway tape. So take the last lining piece, go ahead and find the centers. We're going to fold these over. And then we're going to stitch this on. So the center of this pocket is obviously right in between the two pockets. I'm just going to go ahead and put that on just like that. Use some of my Sew Tight magnets. Now, if you are not familiar with these, they hold really well. But when you put them together, you got to be careful that you don't pinch your fingers. And what I mean by that is they're so strong. When you go to do this, if your finger's in there, it's going to pinch it. Trust me, I know. So just be careful with them. They're fantastic. They work great. You just got to be a little careful with them. All right. So from here, we're going to stitch down, moving our pleat out of the way, stitch across, and then we're going to stitch right in between the pleat, up and down, and then back over and up. Okay, we'll turn, stick that pleat under there. And then when I get right in between these two pleats, I'm just going to fold this pleat up out of the way. I'm going to turn, stitch right beside this one. Going to turn again and come down that same line. And then turn one more time, stick this pleat underneath there and stitch. And I'm going to do a little back stitch here to make sure these pleats stay. Okay, and turn, get this pleat out of the way. Remove the magnets carefully, put them back together. And then we have our gusseted slip pockets. All right, I'm gonna go see if my edge paint has dried on my snap tab so we can go ahead and put the upper lining on. The snap tabs are finally dry. So I went ahead and clipped one snap tab, the one that I want facing down, on the same side of the lining as the slip pocket, and I'm going to center it right in the center here. I'm going to base that on. And then I'm going to take my upper lining, and remember we did draw a line on this to know exactly where the 1/2 inch seam allowance is going to go. So I'm just going to go ahead and clip the other end, right sides together with this lining piece. And we are going to stitch. We're going to turn this upper lining with the seam allowance going towards the upper lining to the top, and then we are going to top stitch. We're going to set this aside for just a minute and take our other lining piece. Let's go ahead and pull this pocket off. We're going to center the tab, this time facing up, and we're going to baste it in place. We're going to take our upper lining, opposite side of where we drew our 1/2 inch line, and clip that right sides together with the lining. Going to do the same thing by putting this upper lining to the top with the seam allowance behind and top stitch. So now we're going to clip this pocket back on. We're going to take the side of the lining and we're going to match it up with the side of the pocket. We're going to do the same thing on this other side. And now we're going to baste this pocket on, and you can see we've got, it's gapping here, and it should be. Now the snaps are holding it together on the top, but at the bottom it's gapping. This is going to end up being on the around the outside, and it's going to hold the back closed. But for right now, I'm just going to stick that in there. So you may have to hold this piece up, or go ahead and just unclip it to sew it. Okay, we're just going to shift it to the other side and do the same thing. So now we have this pocket somewhat completed. So we're going to do the same kind of thing for the bottom. We're going to take the bottom of the actual lining piece, and we're going to have it meet the pocket bottom. Now, you are going to have extra on the sides, okay? So what you may want to do is just go ahead and find the center of both of these so that you know you're clipping it evenly. So I'm just going to find the center of the lining, find the center of the pocket. I'm going to make sure those two match. And then I'm going to clip the rest. So on the bottom sides, this is what you're going to have. You're going to have like a start of a box corner here, and you're going to have the little cutout on your pocket. Okay, so right now we're just going to sew along this bottom edge. So here's what we have. You can see you've got a nice thick section here. Everything looks great. So from here, we're going to now sew these together. So go ahead and line up the sides. I'm going to make sure my upper lining matches. We're going to clip down. I'm going to sew this side first, and then we will come around here and clip the other side. So now take this other side and pull it over. I'm going to clip along this edge, and we're going to do the same thing. Go ahead and sew. All right, so here's what we have. You've got this smaller section here, you've got the larger section here. So now we're going to do the same thing at the bottom. We're going to take this bottom piece, I'm going to find the center just so I can make sure everything lines up well. And we're going to attach it to the other bottom piece, making sure we line up these center points. So this is definitely a different construction. This is pretty cool. I like the way she does it. I don't think I've ever put a bag together this way. I can promise you I haven't. Now, one thing she does mention is that the side seams are not on the side. They're not centered. Well, they're on the side. They're just not centered. So this seam here, when we go to sew it to the bag, is not going to line up with our side seam on the front of the bag. It's going to be slightly off, which is good for sewing because you don't have the bulk. But you can almost see here as you sew, when we do the next step and sew this box corner, you can see how this seam is off center. All right, so I'm going to stitch. I think I'm going to stitch this one from this side. So from here, we're going to box the corners. And again, you'll see the corners are off. I'm going to put the seam allowance, I'm going to nest these seam allowances. So instead of trying to open them up, I'm going to put one in one direction and one in the other direction. And then I'm just going to make sure when I clip this side that the bottom seam is going in the same direction as this side. Okay, so now we're going to sew the box corner. All right, and there's our inside. So this will snap together like that. We've got nice big pockets on this side. Here we've got a pocket that has got foam on both this side and this side, so it's a great place for whatever kind of gadget you may have. Okay. And then the lining is complete. So I'm going to cut back these seam allowances and then we'll move on to the next step. So now it's time to put the bag together. I went ahead and put 1/2" double-sided tape all along the top of the exterior of the bag, and I folded the seam allowance down over the foam all the way around. If you remember, we marked where the foam was going to be, so I feel really confident in that 1/2", folded over neatly, and it gave me a nice straight edge all the way around the bag. I'm going to do the same thing for the lining. Because this bag is, because of this pocket here, or this divider, you cannot do a method where you turn it right sides together, or you put it right sides together and then you turn and turn the bag out and top stitch. You have to do a drop-in lining. I mean, there's just no other way around it. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put some double-sided tape at the top of the lining all the way around so I can fold this edge over as well. So we of course marked where that 1/2" it was on this side as well. And I can tell you that when you fold this edge over, you're basically going to have this raw edge meet this raw edge. Just with the measurement of the upper lining and the way it all comes together with the seam allowances, that's how it's going to work out. So let me find my scissors. And then we're going to just peel this back. And fold this edge over the 1/2". So again, it's going to be pretty much equal with that main part of the lining. And don't pull, okay? Because if you pull, your linings aren't going to match. So just make sure you do, kind of like when you do a handle, you just want to roll that edge over. I'm going to try to make sure I keep this in the camera so you can see it. Sometimes it's a little awkward for me to do it, to fold it over from the angles I have to with the camera here, but that's okay. We'll get it done. Just know that sometimes as I'm doing this, it looks harder than it really is. It's just the angle I'm trying to keep it at so you guys can see it. Now I am going to take this over to the cylinder arm to top stitch. It's big enough that you don't have to, but I really like the way this bag's coming together. I want to make sure I top stitch is nice and pretty. Okay, so we're going to stick this in the bag, and I think I want this divider pocket to be towards the back of the bag. So Go ahead and put this in. And you do want to make sure that it fits well before you do this, which I did cheat a little bit and make sure that it did. Just going to slide it in. And of course, don't forget, you want to roll that edge over on your main part of your bag as well. Now remember, when you go to clip this together, your side seams are not going to match. Your lining side seam, in my case, is going to be more towards my back on both edges. So you see here we have a difference. And it's hard to know exactly where that's supposed to be, that edge. You're going to have to kind of play with it, get the bag down in there really good, and then just kind of let it do what it will. You know where the center is roughly on the front of your bag, and obviously where the lining is as well because of where you put the snap tabs. So maybe go ahead and line that up first and go ahead and clip. And obviously you want your snap tabs to be opposite each other. Good and centered. And then you can kind of figure out where these sides go. Just for reference purposes, so that you know how my sides lined up, my side seam on my bag and my seam for my lining are right at 1 inch apart. So let me make sure this side is 1 inch as well. And it is. So just kind of keep that in mind as you go along. Also, again, make sure that your tabs here in the middle match up good. So again, I'm going to take this over to the cylinder arm. We're going to top stitch this together, and then we will attach our strap and we'll be done. Here we are at the cylinder arm. I'm going to start here on the side. And you always want to, of course, hold your threads. And you only need to do it for 1 or 2 stitches. You'll be good to go. And then I'm just going to make sure that these edges are staying together as I stitch this bag closed. All right, so we have the top stitching completed. We're going to work on getting the strap connectors on now. The last part of this bag is just doing some measuring and some punching to get the strap connectors on. And what's going to happen is the connectors are going to be centered on the side of this bag. Okay, so it's going to cover the side seam, but you're going to put a rivet on one, either side, one side or the other. It's not going to be in way of the seam on the lining because that's further back, so you won't have a problem with it interfering with any of your stitches. One of these is going to get an O-ring and the other one is going to get a D-ring. So I'm going to slide one of these O-rings on. And what we want to do is measure basically down 2.5 inches. We want the bottom of the connector to be 2.5 inches below the top. So that right there is about right. I'm going to take my silver marking pen and I'm going to, right through the holes I made on the connector, go ahead and mark the bag. Make sure I can see those marks. And then I'm going to punch a hole. Now, I may not be able to use my puncher for that. I'm not going to be able to because it's not deep enough. So I'm going to have to take this over to my riveting station to punch the holes with a manual punch. So before I do that, let me measure the other side. So let me put the D-ring here and mark the other side. I'm going to make sure that it's 2.5 inches down. And centered. I'm going to take my pen and mark it through the existing holes that are already there. And when I punch the holes, I'm going to punch them right through to the lining. Okay, so when we put these strap connectors on, you're going to see rivets on the lining. I don't think that's a big deal. I don't mind that at all. So I'm going to go punch those holes and then we will connect the, put the strap connectors on together. I went ahead and installed the strap connector on one side. On this side, you want to put your O-ring. And the O-ring is going to be for the swivel clasp to go through. You want to make sure that you put, of course, 2 at the bottom, and you're going to put 1 at the top above the top of the bag. And that's just going to prevent this from moving. Okay, so I ended up having to go with 12mm rivets instead of, I think she said 9, but that was a little bit too small for me. I would say that if you think you might have a hard time with the rivets, do away with the stabilizer in the handle connectors and the strap connectors. I think it's probably stable enough without it, and that just adds some bulk that you probably would benefit from not having with the strap connectors. Okay, on this side you're going to put, of course, your rivets, and you're going to put your D-ring, but you're also going to thread the O-ring of your strap through the strap connector before you attach it to the bag. I thought I had the camera going here and I didn't, so I apologize, but just go over that. So I put my 2 rivets here, and now I'm about ready to attach this one here. When you go to attach this, you want to make sure you pull this D-ring down. You don't want the D-ring and the O-ring to be next to each other. You're going to pull them apart, and you can put the rivet right in the middle. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and set this rivet. Alright, let's get this out of the way. So to put the strap together, you're going to feed your swivel clasp through your O-ring on the other side. And I did test this before I did it, and it went through fine. So let me see if I can get it through. I'll work on that, and then you're going to connect it to the D-ring over here, or you could simply just connect it to this and have a longer strap. Okay, so you get two different ways of wearing it. This way, or feed this through and come back to the D-ring to have a shorter strap. Okay, so I'm going to try to get that part done, and then we'll take a look at the bag. All right, here it is. The Harumi Bag from Amercian Stitchers, Harumi, Harumi Bag. It is so cool. I loved doing this bag. There were so many cool techniques, things I had never done before to put a bag together. You got a nice front pocket here. I love the way the strap works. You can unhook it from the D-ring, hook it over here to this O-ring, and make it a crossbody. Either way, I love that you've got a gadget pocket, which I'm going to use it as a gadget pocket. I'm going to use it for my iPad. You've got foam on both sides. Let's take a look. Okay, let me get it together here. Okay, so as you know, you've got this snap at the top with our slip pockets here for sunglasses or whatnot. You got some depth to them. On this side, we have our gadget pocket, so you don't really see it until you undo the magnetic snaps, and then you have a place for your phone charger, and then of course a place for your iPad. Now, as I said in the beginning, this is a concealed carry bag. You can certainly put Velcro there and use that for, you know, if you carry, you can put your gun in there, you can put a magazine, whatever it is you want. But this is so cool. I love this. Okay, so Harumi from Amercian Stitchers. I'm going to link the pattern below. Any questions, you know where to find me, Chris at simplyclassic.net. And until next time, happy sewing.